Drama has never been far from the Ryder Cup, but on the final day of the 2025 edition at Bethpage Black, it wasn't a long putt or a booming drive that stole the spotlight. It was a rule. A rule buried deep in Ryder Cup tradition, a rule that fans rarely hear about until disaster strikes. The envelope rule. And this year, it cost Viktor Hovland his Sunday match and took Harris English down with him. The drama unfolds Saturday had already been chaotic. Team Europe dominated the early sessions, their stars shining, with Viktor Hovland playing a huge role in Europe's commanding lead. But whispers spread late in the day. Hovland had a neck injury. He missed Saturday evening's 4 balls, and fans hoped he'd recover overnight. On Sunday morning, just 30 minutes before the singles were due to begin, the news broke. Hovland was out, and with that announcement, the rarely invoked envelope rule was triggered. What is the envelope rule? Here's how it works. Before the Ryder Cup begins, each captain secretly writes one player's name on a piece of paper and seals it in an envelope. This player is essentially the team's emergency withdrawal substitute. If a player from one team cannot compete in Sunday's singles through injury, illness, or any unforeseen reason, the player in the other captain's envelope is pulled out of the lineup. The 2 players are paired against each other on paper, but since neither plays, the match is automatically declared a halved game. Each team is awarded half a point. It's golf's version of a contingency plan, a quiet piece of insurance for the chaos of sport. The 2025 twist. Hovland and English. When Hovland withdrew, Europe had no choice. Their singles lineup dropped from 12 to 11. Team USA's envelope was then opened. Inside, the name Harris English. This meant Hovland versus English was the match that never happened. The scoreline immediately saw Europe move to 12 points, USA to 5 points. Both men were sidelined, one through injury, one through bad luck. For Harris English, it was a brutal twist. A Ryder Cup newcomer hungry to prove himself, robbed of the chance to fight for his team because of a rule designed to balance fairness. The human side Hovland, devastated, released a heartfelt statement. "There is nothing more I would like to do than be out there representing Team Europe and trying to help them win the Ryder Cup today. Not being able to do so is pretty heartbreaking. I will be backing my team as hard as I can and rooting them on." Imagine the frustration. A player who had delivered all week, cut down not by an opponent, but by his own body. And for Harris English, equally crushing. He hadn't played poorly, hadn't been dropped for form, but his Ryder Cup Sunday was taken from him because his name sat in an envelope. Impact on the Ryder Cup. The envelope rule rarely comes into play, but when it does, it shifts the narrative. For Europe, starting the day with 12 points meant they were only 2-1-2 points away from clinching the cup. For Team USA, already trailing, it was another blow to morale. They began the biggest day of their golfing year not with momentum, but with confusion and frustration. And fans? Many were shocked. For casual viewers, the envelope rule felt like an obscure technicality, suddenly rewriting the story of the final day. History of the envelope rule. The envelope rule has been around for decades, but it has almost never been used. It exists because Ryder Cup singles are so delicate. 12 matches, every point crucial, no substitutes available like in other sports. Without the rule, one team could gain an unfair advantage if their opponent had to forfeit a match. By ensuring the contest stays even, the Ryder Cup maintains its integrity. But that fairness comes at a cost. And in 2025, that cost was Harris English's chance to compete. The bigger picture. The envelope rule sparks debate every time it appears. Some argue it's necessary, ensuring fairness across the board. Others say it's unfair to the player who gets benched for no reason of their own. In this case, fans questioned whether captains should be allowed to change their envelope choice closer to Sunday, especially if injuries become apparent. But tradition won, the rule stayed, and English paid the price. Europe's march to victory for Europe, Hovland's absence was softened by their dominance. With McIlroy, Fleetwood, Rahm, and others still firing, they had the depth to withstand the loss. The early half-point from the envelope rule even padded their lead. For Team USA, the rule symbolized their entire week. frustration, missed opportunities, and moments slipping through their fingers. The Ryder Cup is about heroes, pressure, and unforgettable shots. But sometimes it's about rules. Rules written years ago, waiting quietly until fate calls on them. In 2025, Viktor Hovland's injury opened the envelope, and Harris English's dream Sunday was sealed shut before it even began. The envelope rule kept the competition balanced, but left two golfers heartbroken. And in the end, it reminded us all that in the Ryder Cup, drama doesn't just happen on the course. Sometimes it's written on a folded piece of paper.